What happens when a single photograph shatters everything you believed about where you came from? For 26 years, Emma Richardson thought she knew her story. Abandoned at birth, raised in foster care, alone in the world. For Vincent Sterling, a hotel magnate whose name commanded respect in every room he entered, the past was something to be controlled, managed, hidden behind walls of silence and legal agreements. She was pouring drinks to pay off student loans. He was building monuments to his own success. But when she discovered a photograph tucked inside a decades-old book, showing a woman who could have been her twin, their two worlds collided in a way that would expose secrets powerful enough to destroy a dynasty. This isn't a story about coincidence. This is a story about the lies families tell to protect themselves and the daughter who refused to stay buried. The basement of Morrison's used books smelled like old paper and forgotten dreams. Emma Richardson sat cross-legged on the concrete floor, sorting through boxes of estate sale acquisitions that her boss had purchased in bulk. It was tedious work, but it paid better than her bartending shifts, and she could listen to podcasts while she worked. Most of the books were worthless. Outdated textbooks, water-damaged novels, self-help books from the 80s. She was about to toss a 1987 business management guide into the recycle pile when something slipped from between its pages. A photograph, edges yellowed with age, the colors faded but still visible. Emma picked it up and her heart stopped. The woman in the photograph was young, maybe 22, standing in front of what looked like the Sterling Grand Hotel. She recognized the distinctive Art Deco architecture from downtown. The woman wore a burgundy dress, her dark hair falling in waves past her shoulders. She was smiling, but there was something sad in her eyes, something that seemed to reach across the decades. The woman looked exactly like Emma, not similar, not reminiscent, identical, the same heart-shaped face, the same dark eyes, set a little too far apart, the same slightly crooked smile that Emma had always been self-conscious about. Even the small birthmark on the woman's left cheekbone. Emma touched her own face reflexively, feeling the familiar raised dot was in the exact same place. Emma's hands trembled as she turned the photograph over. Written in faded blue ink was a date, June 15th, 1998, and a name, Katherine, no last name. Just Katherine and a date from 26 years ago, the exact year Emma was born. Emma had spent her entire life wondering about her birth mother. The official story was simple and depressingly common. She'd been left at a hospital in Portland when she was 2 days old, wrapped in a yellow blanket with no note, no identification, nothing. The hospital had named her Emma, a nurse's choice, and she'd spent her childhood bouncing between foster homes until she aged out of the system at 18. She'd tried searching before, of course. Every adoptee did, but with no name, no records, no starting point, the search had gone nowhere. She taught herself to stop wondering, to accept that some questions didn't have answers. But now, holding this photograph, all those questions came roaring back. Who was Katherine? Why did she look exactly like Emma? And why was her photograph hidden in a book about corporate management? Emma pulled out her phone and took a picture of the photograph, then carefully stored the original in her backpack. Her shift wasn't over for another 3 hours, but suddenly sorting books felt impossible. Her mind was racing, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and fear she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. That evening, back in her cramped studio apartment, Emma sat at her laptop and began to search. She typed Katherine Sterling Grand Hotel, 1998, into every search engine she could find. Most results were useless, current hotel information, reviews, booking sites. But then, buried on the 7th page of results, she found something. It was a society page from the Portland Tribune, dated July 1998. The article was about a charity gala held at the Sterling Grand, one of those fluffy pieces about who wore what and who donated how much. Emma almost scrolled past it until she saw the name. Katherine Whitfield, daughter of hotel magnate Vincent Sterling, was notably absent from the annual Sterling Foundation Gala, despite being listed on the program as a performer. A spokesperson for the family cited illness, though sources close to the family suggest a more complicated situation. Miss Whitfield, 22, is Sterling's daughter from his first marriage and has been estranged from her father for several months following disagreements about her future with the family business. Emma read the paragraph 3 times, her pulse quickening with each pass. Katherine Whitfield, daughter of Vincent Sterling. Vincent Sterling, the Vincent Sterling. The man owned half the luxury hotels on the West Coast. His face was on business magazines. His name was on buildings. He was one of those billionaires who seemed more like a myth than a person, existing in a world so far removed from Emma's reality that he might as well have been fictional. And Katherine Whitfield was his daughter. His estranged daughter, who had disappeared from public view in the summer of 1998, the summer Emma was born. Emma's apartment suddenly felt too small, the walls pressing in. She stood and paced, her mind working through the implications. It was crazy. It was impossible. But the photograph didn't lie. The timing didn't lie. She pulled up more searches, digging deeper. Katherine Whitfield had vanished from public records after 1998. No marriage licenses, no death certificate, no social media presence, nothing. It was as if she had simply ceased to exist. But Emma existed. Emma, who had been abandoned at a Portland hospital in August 1998, just 2 months after Katherine disappeared from public view. The connection felt too significant to be coincidence. Emma grabbed her phone and called the only person who might understand. Her friend Marcus, who she'd met in foster care and who had become the closest thing to family she had. "Marcus, I found something. I think I know who my mother was." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Emma, we've been through this. Every lead has, I have a photograph. Marcus, she looks exactly like me. And her father is Vincent Sterling." Another pause, longer this time. "The hotel guy?" "Emma, that's insane. I know how it sounds. But I'm looking at this picture, and it's me. It's my face. And the timeline matches perfectly." "Okay, slow down," Marcus said, his voice taking on the careful tone he used when he thought she was spinning out. "Even if this woman is related to you, that doesn't mean Sterling is your grandfather. It could be a cousin, or she disappeared in the summer of 1998. I was born in August 1998. She was his daughter, and then she just vanished from all public records." "Which could mean a lot of things," Marcus said gently. "Emma, I don't want to see you get hurt. These rich families, they're not like us. They have lawyers and NDAs and ways of making problems disappear. If Vincent Sterling wanted to hide something, he has the resources to do it." "That's exactly why I need to find out the truth," Emma said. "If Katherine was my mother, if she was forced to give me up because of her family, I deserve to know." "And then what? You march up to Sterling's mansion and demand a DNA test? These people will crush you." Emma looked at the photograph again, at Katherine's sad smile and familiar eyes. "Maybe, but I have to try." The next morning, Emma called in sick to both her jobs and did something that terrified her. She walked into the Sterling Grand Hotel. The lobby was breathtaking, all marble and gold. Crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light across surfaces that probably cost more than Emma's entire education. She felt immediately out of place in her thrift store jacket and worn jeans, aware of the doorman's subtle scrutiny as she entered. She approached the concierge desk, where a woman in a crisp uniform smiled at her with professional warmth. "Welcome to the Sterling Grand. How may I assist you today?" Emma's throat was dry. "I'm looking for information about someone who used to be connected to the hotel." "Katherine Whitfield?" She was Vincent Sterling's daughter. The smile on the concierge's face froze, then melted into something cooler. "I'm sorry, but we don't provide personal information about the Sterling family. If you're a journalist, you'll need to contact our public relations department." "I'm not a journalist," Emma said quickly. I think she might have been my mother." The concierge's expression shifted from professional distance to genuine surprise, then quickly to wariness. "I really can't help you, but if you'd like to leave your contact information, I can pass it along to—" "Is there a problem here?" Both women turned. A man in his 50s stood behind them, his dark suit immaculate, his salt and pepper hair perfectly styled. He had the bearing of someone accustomed to authority, and the concierge immediately straightened. "Mr. Montgomery, this young woman was asking about the Sterling family. I was explaining our policies." The man, Montgomery, studied Emma with sharp intelligence. His gaze lingered on her face for just a moment too long, and Emma saw something flicker in his eyes. Recognition? Shock? "It's fine, Katherine," he said to the concierge. "I'll handle this." He turned to Emma. "I'm Douglas Montgomery, general manager of the Sterling Grand. Why don't we speak in my office?" Emma followed him through the lobby, up a private elevator, into a suite of executive offices that screamed wealth and power. Montgomery closed the door behind them and gestured to a chair. "Sit down, please." "Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "I'm fine," Emma said, though she was anything but. Her hands were shaking. Montgomery sat across from her, his expression unreadable. "You said you think Katherine Whitfield was your mother. May I ask what makes you believe that?" Emma pulled out her phone and showed him the photograph. "I found this. She looks exactly like me. And I was born in August 1998, right after she disappeared from public view." Montgomery stared at the photograph for a long moment. When he looked up, his face had gone pale. "Where did you get this?" "In a used bookstore. It was tucked inside an old book." "Who was she? What happened to her?" Montgomery stood and walked to the window, his back to Emma. When he spoke, his voice was heavy. Katherine was a remarkable young woman. Brilliant, kind, full of dreams. She wanted to be a concert pianist, but her father had different plans. Vincent Sterling, yes, Vincent believed family legacy was everything. He expected Katherine to take over the business eventually, to continue the Sterling name. But Katherine wanted nothing to do with it. They fought constantly. And then, in the spring of 1998, Katherine got pregnant. Emma's breath caught. With me, Montgomery turned back to face her. She never told anyone who the father was. Vincent was furious. He saw it as a betrayal, a scandal that could damage the family reputation. He demanded she terminate the pregnancy. Katherine refused. "What happened?" "She ran away. She was 7 months pregnant when she left. Vincent hired investigators to find her, but Katherine was clever. She stayed hidden. And then, in August, Vincent received a call from a hospital in Portland. Katherine had given birth to a baby girl. She was asking for him." Emma felt tears burning in her eyes. "Did he go?" "He did. I was with him. When we got to the hospital, Katherine was in bad shape. There had been complications during the delivery. Internal bleeding. By the time we arrived, she was unconscious." Montgomery's voice cracked. "She died 3 hours later. She never got to hold her baby. Never got to say goodbye." The words hit Emma like a physical blow. Her mother, Katherine, had died giving birth to her, had died without ever holding her, without ever choosing to abandon her. "The baby," Emma whispered. "What happened to the baby?" Montgomery looked at her with something like pity. Vincent made a decision. He was grieving, angry, convinced that the pregnancy had killed his daughter. He told the hospital that there was no family to claim the child. He signed away all parental rights. And then he had his lawyers bury every record, every connection between the Sterling family and that baby. "He abandoned me," Emma said, her voice hollow. "His own granddaughter. He was broken," Montgomery said quietly. "That doesn't excuse what he did. But I need you to understand. Vincent Sterling loved his daughter more than anything in the world. When she died, something in him died too. He couldn't look at you without seeing her, without remembering what he'd lost. So he erased you from existence." Emma stood, anger and grief warring inside her. "I deserve to know him. I deserve to know my family." "I agree," Montgomery said. "And I'll help you. But you need to understand what you're walking into. Vincent Sterling is 81 years old now. He's still sharp, still powerful, and still utterly ruthless when it comes to protecting the family name. He has another daughter from his second marriage, Patricia Sterling, who runs the foundation. She doesn't know about you, and she won't be happy when she finds out." "I don't care about her happiness," Emma said. "I care about the truth." Montgomery pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. This is Vincent's private number. He won't answer calls from numbers he doesn't recognize, so tell him I gave it to you. But Emma," he paused, his expression serious, "be prepared for him to reject you. Be prepared for him to deny everything. These people have lawyers who can make your life very difficult if they choose to. Then I'll get my own lawyer," Emma said, taking the card. "Thank you for telling me the truth." As she left the hotel, Emma's hands shook so badly she could barely hold her phone. But she dialed the number Montgomery had given her. The phone rang 4 times before a crisp, elderly voice answered. "Who is this?" "My name is Emma Richardson. Douglas Montgomery gave me this number. I need to speak with you about your daughter Katherine." There was a long silence. "Then Katherine is dead." "I know. I'm calling because I think I'm her daughter. I think I'm your granddaughter." Another silence, even longer. When Vincent Sterling finally spoke, his voice was cold as ice. "I don't know who you are or what you're after, but I don't have a granddaughter. Katherine died alone. Her child died with her. That's the official record, and that's the truth." "The official record is a lie," Emma said, her voice shaking but firm. "You abandoned me at that hospital. You erased me from your family's history because you couldn't bear to look at me. But I'm alive and I'm here, and I deserve to know where I came from." "You deserve nothing," Vincent said, and the venom in his voice made Emma flinch. "You're the reason my daughter is dead. If she'd never gotten pregnant, if you'd never existed, she'd still be alive. Stay away from my family. If you try to contact me again, my lawyers will destroy you." The line went dead. Emma stood on the sidewalk outside the Sterling Grand, tears streaming down her face, tourists and business people flowing around her like she was a stone in a river. She'd found her family, and they didn't want her. But Emma Richardson had spent her entire life fighting for every scrap of belonging she'd ever had. She'd survived the foster care system, put herself through college while working 2 jobs, built a life from nothing. She wasn't going to give up now. If Vincent Sterling wanted a war, she'd give him one. The next morning, Emma walked into the office of Rebecca Chen, a civil rights attorney who had a reputation for taking on powerful institutions. Emma had spent half the night researching lawyers, looking for someone with the courage and skill to stand up to the Sterling family. Rebecca's office was small but tidy, in a building far from the gleaming downtown towers. She was in her 40s, with sharp eyes, and an expression that suggested she'd seen everything twice. "Tell me your story," Rebecca said, gesturing to a chair. Emma laid out everything: the photograph, the research, Montgomery's revelations, Vincent's rejection. When she finished, Rebecca leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled. "This is going to be expensive, emotionally draining, and possibly futile," Rebecca said bluntly. "The Sterlings have money and power. They can drag this out for years. They can make you miserable. Are you prepared for that?" "I've been miserable before," Emma said. "At least now I'd be miserable with a purpose." Rebecca smiled slightly. "All right, first thing we need is proof. A DNA test would be ideal, but Sterling won't voluntarily submit to one. So we need to get creative." "How?" "Patricia Sterling, Vincent's younger daughter. She's your aunt, genetically speaking. If we can get a DNA sample from her, we can prove familial relationship. That would give us grounds to compel Vincent to test. How do we get her DNA?" Rebecca pulled up a website on her computer. "Patricia runs the Sterling Foundation. They're hosting a gala next month, a big charity event. Very public, lots of guests. You're going to attend." Emma looked at the ticket price and nearly choked. "I can't afford that?" "You won't need to. I have a client who sits on the foundation board. She owes me a favor. You'll go as her guest. Once you're there, you get close to Patricia and you get something with her DNA, a glass she drinks from, a napkin she uses, something we can test." "That sounds illegal." "It's not. DNA evidence obtained from items voluntarily discarded in public is admissible. It's called abandoned DNA, and courts have upheld it repeatedly. It's ethically gray, but it's legal." Emma thought about it for all of 3 seconds. "Let's do it." The month before the gala passed in a blur of preparation. Rebecca filed preliminary paperwork, researching case law, building a strategy. Emma continued working her jobs, saving every penny she could. But the stress was taking its toll. One night at the bar where she worked, Emma's hands shook so badly she dropped a tray of glasses. Her manager, a gruff man named Tony, who'd always had a soft spot for her, pulled her aside. "You okay, kid? You've been off your game for weeks." Emma wanted to tell him everything, about Katherine, about Vincent, about the family she'd discovered and the battle she was fighting. But the words stuck in her throat. "Just tired," she managed. Tony studied her with concern. "Look, I don't know what's going on, but you've got people who care about you. Don't forget that, all right? Whatever you're dealing with, you don't have to do it alone." His kindness nearly broke her. Emma nodded, blinking back tears, and returned to work. Later that week, Marcus took her shopping for the gala dress. They spent hours in consignment shops and discount stores, Emma trying on gowns that felt like costumes, like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. "This is insane," Emma said, staring at herself in a dressing room mirror. The black gown fit well, made her look elegant, but she barely recognized the woman staring back at her. "I'm a bartender. I sort used books. I don't belong at fancy galas with millionaires." "You're also Katherine Sterling's daughter," Marcus reminded her gently. "You belong anywhere you choose to be. What if I can't do this? What if I get there and freeze up or say something stupid, or then you'll be human?" Marcus interrupted. "Emma, you've survived things that would have destroyed most people. You put yourself through college while working 2 jobs. You faced down a billionaire and his army of lawyers. You can handle a party." Emma looked at her reflection again, trying to see what Marcus saw. "I just keep thinking about her, Katherine. She would have been my age when she died. What if I fail her? What if I get this chance to tell her story and I screw it up?" Marcus put his hands on her shoulders. "You won't, because you're not doing this for revenge or money. You're doing it for truth. And truth has a power that all the Sterling money can't touch." The night before the gala, Emma couldn't sleep. She lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, Katherine's journals spread around her. She'd read them so many times she had passages memorized, but tonight she needed to hear her mother's voice again. She opened to a page near the end, written just days before Katherine went into labor. "I'm terrified. Not of the birth, though that frightens me too, but of failing this baby, of not being enough. I've spent my whole life being told I wasn't enough. Not enough Sterling, not enough ambition, not enough willingness to sacrifice my dreams for the family legacy. But for this baby, I want to be everything. I want to be brave and strong and wise. I want to protect her from the poison of inherited expectations. I want her to know she's loved for exactly who she is, not for who someone else wants her to be." Emma traced the words with her finger, tears sliding down her face. "I'm trying, Mom," she whispered to the empty room. "I'm trying to be brave." The night of the gala, Emma stood in front of her bathroom mirror, barely recognizing herself. The dress fit well, her hair was styled. She even wore makeup, something she rarely bothered with. She looked elegant. She looked like she belonged. She looked like Katherine. The Sterling Foundation Gala was held at, where else, the Sterling Grand Hotel. Emma arrived with Rebecca's client, a kind woman named Helen, who asked no questions and expected nothing in return. The ballroom was magnificent, filled with Portland's elite, in glittering gowns and expensive tuxedos. And there, holding court near the center of the room, was Patricia Sterling. She was in her mid-40s, blonde and polished, wearing a gown that probably cost more than Emma's car. She laughed easily, moved through the crowd with practiced grace, and seemed completely at ease in her role as the face of the family's philanthropic efforts. Emma watched her for over an hour, waiting for the right moment. Finally, Patricia excused herself and walked toward the restroom. Emma followed at a discreet distance. The restroom was blessedly empty. Patricia stood at the mirror, touching up her lipstick. Emma moved to the sink beside her, washing her hands with soap she definitely didn't need. "Quite a turnout," Emma said casually. Patricia glanced at her with polite disinterest. "Yes, we're very pleased. Are you enjoying yourself?" "Very much." "The Sterling Foundation does incredible work. Thank you." "That's kind of you to say." Patricia turned to leave. "My mother would have loved this," Emma said, her voice catching just slightly, not entirely an act. "She died when I was born. I never got to know her. Patricia paused, and something in her expression softened. I'm so sorry. That must be difficult. It is. But I'm trying to learn about her, to understand where I came from. Family is important, don't you think? It's everything, Patricia said with conviction. She reached out and touched Emma's arm, a brief, sympathetic gesture. I hope you find what you're looking for. After Patricia left, Emma remained at the sink, her heart pounding. She'd done it. She'd made contact, established a human connection. Now she just needed to wait. 10 minutes later, she saw Patricia set down a wine glass on a high-top table and walk away. Emma moved quickly, casually picking up the glass with a cocktail napkin and slipping both into her purse. A waiter gave her an odd look, but she smiled and moved on. She had what she needed. 2 weeks later, Rebecca called with the results. It's a match. Patricia Sterling is your biological aunt, which means Vincent Sterling is your biological grandfather. Emma closed her eyes, relief and vindication washing over her. Now what? Now we compel him to acknowledge you. We file a petition for genetic testing, present the DNA evidence we have, and force him to either submit to testing or accept the existing evidence. Either way, we establish legal paternity, or in this case, grand paternity. Will he fight it? Absolutely. But Emma, we have him. The science doesn't lie. The legal battle that followed was exactly as brutal as Rebecca had warned. The Sterling family lawyers filed motion after motion, trying to dismiss the case, to suppress the DNA evidence, to paint Emma as a gold digger looking for a payout. They dug into her past, finding every mistake she'd ever made, every job she'd lost, every month she'd been late on rent. They tried to destroy her credibility. They tried to destroy her character. They tried to destroy her. But Emma had spent her whole life being underestimated, dismissed, treated as disposable. She knew how to endure, and more than that, she knew she was right. 4 months into the legal battle, something unexpected happened. Douglas Montgomery called her. I have information you need to see, he said. Can you meet me? They met at a coffee shop far from downtown, away from prying eyes. Montgomery looked older than Emma remembered, the weight of what he was about to do visible in the lines of his face. I can't let this continue, he said without preamble. What Vincent did to you was wrong. What he's doing now is unconscionable. He slid a thick envelope across the table. These are Katherine's personal effects. Her journals, letters, photographs. Vincent ordered me to destroy them after she died. I couldn't do it. I've kept them in a safety deposit box for 26 years, waiting for the right moment. Emma opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were leather-bound journals, stacks of letters tied with ribbon, photographs of a young woman who looked exactly like her. She pulled out one of the journals and opened to a random page. The handwriting was elegant, slanted, filled with hope and pain. I know Father will never forgive me for this pregnancy. He sees it as a betrayal, a stain on the Sterling name. But this baby, my baby, is the first thing in my life that's truly mine, not his. Not the family's, mine. I'm going to name her Emma after my grandmother, Emma Rose, and I'm going to give her everything I never had, freedom, choice, love without conditions. Emma's vision blurred with tears. Her mother had chosen her name, had loved her before she was even born, had planned a future for her. There's more, Montgomery said quietly. Keep reading. Emma flipped through the journals, seeing her mother's life unfold in words. Katherine had been in love with a musician named David Harris, who Vincent had deemed unsuitable, too poor, too artistic, not Sterling material. When Katherine had gotten pregnant, Vincent had given her an ultimatum: end the relationship and terminate the pregnancy or be disowned. Katherine had chosen love. She'd chosen her baby, and she'd paid for that choice with her life. But there was something else in the journals, something Montgomery had marked with a sticky note. A passage from Katherine's final entry, written the day before she went into labor. If anything happens to me, if I don't survive this, I need someone to know the truth. Father threatened David, told him if he didn't disappear, Father would have him arrested on fabricated charges. David had a prior record, small drug possession from college. Father said he'd make sure David went to prison, that he'd never see me or the baby again. So David left. He didn't abandon us. He was forced out, just like I was forced into hiding. Just like my baby will be forced into a life without family. The Sterling legacy isn't wealth. It's the destruction of anything that threatens the illusion of perfection. Emma looked up at Montgomery, tears streaming down her face. My father was forced away. He didn't leave by choice. David Harris, Montgomery said. I tracked him down 5 years ago. He's living in Seattle. He's married now, has 2 children. But I spoke with him. He never stopped wondering about Katherine, about the baby. Vincent's threat worked. David was terrified of going to prison, of losing everything. So he ran. Does he know about me? That I'm alive? No. Vincent told him Katherine had a miscarriage, that she died from complications. Another lie to keep the secret buried. Emma sat back, overwhelmed. Why are you helping me? You've worked for Vincent for decades. Montgomery's expression was pained. Because I loved Katherine too. Not romantically, I was her father's employee, far too old, far too aware of my place. But I watched her grow up, saw her brilliance, her kindness, and I watched Vincent break her spirit piece by piece. When she died, I promised myself I'd protect her memory. But I failed. I let Vincent erase her. I let him erase you. I can't change the past, but I can help you now. This evidence, Emma said, touching the journals, this changes everything. It proves Katherine wanted you, that she loved you, that her death wasn't your fault. And it proves Vincent's actions were motivated by cruelty, not grief. A man who genuinely mourned his daughter wouldn't have erased her child from existence. He'd have cherished you as the last piece of her. Emma stood, holding the envelope like it was made of gold. Thank you. Thank you for keeping these safe, for waiting until the right moment. Make him pay, Montgomery said quietly. Not for the money. Make him pay by living the life Katherine wanted for you. A life of freedom, choice, and love without conditions. The journals changed the trajectory of the case. Rebecca filed them as evidence, along with Montgomery's testimony as a witness. The court ordered Vincent Sterling to submit to DNA testing. His lawyers fought it, but the evidence was overwhelming. When the results came back, they confirmed what Emma had known in her heart from the moment she'd seen Katherine's photograph. Vincent Sterling was her biological grandfather. She was Katherine Sterling's daughter. She was a Sterling, whether they wanted her or not. The revelation sent shockwaves through Portland's society circles. Headlines screamed the story. Sterling's secret granddaughter emerges. Hotel magnate hid daughter's death and grandchild for 26 years. DNA test reveals Sterling family cover-up. Patricia Sterling, who had built her public image on family values and charitable works, found herself in an impossible position. She reached out to Emma through Rebecca, requesting a private meeting. They met in Patricia's office at the Sterling Foundation, a bright modern space filled with photographs of smiling children helped by the foundation's programs. Patricia looked exhausted, her polished veneer cracking. I didn't know, she said before Emma could speak. I swear to you I had no idea. My father told me Katherine died in a car accident before I was born. He never mentioned a pregnancy, never mentioned you. I've spent my entire life believing I was his only living child. Emma studied her aunt, and it was strange to think of her that way as aunt, and saw genuine shock and pain in her face. Did you know about Katherine at all? About who she really was? I knew she existed, that she was father's daughter from his first marriage, but he never spoke about her. It was like she was a ghost in our family. I always wondered, but I learned early not to ask questions father didn't want to answer. Do you hate me? Emma asked bluntly. For disrupting your life, for exposing the family secrets. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. No, I'm angry at my father for lying. I'm angry at the wasted years. But I don't hate you. You're my niece. You're Katherine's daughter, and you deserve to know your family. Your father disagrees. My father is a stubborn, prideful man who would rather burn everything down than admit he was wrong, Patricia said with surprising bitterness. But he's also 81 years old, and his health is failing. The doctors say he has maybe 2 years. He spent those years building walls when he should have been building bridges. I don't want his money, Emma said. I want people to understand that. I'm not here for an inheritance or a payout. I just wanted to know where I came from. I wanted to know my mother. I believe you, Patricia said, and I want to help. The foundation has resources. We work with genealogists, family historians, people who help adoptees find their birth families. Let me connect you with them. Let me help you learn about Katherine, about the Sterling family history. The real history, not the sanitized version Father approved. Over the following months, Emma's life transformed in ways she'd never imagined. Patricia became an unexpected ally, providing access to family records, photographs, stories about Katherine from people who had known her. Emma learned that her mother had been a gifted pianist, that she'd volunteered at children's hospitals, that she'd dreamed of opening a music school for underprivileged kids. She learned that Katherine had been brilliant and kind and brave, everything Emma had always wished a mother could be. And she learned about David Harris, her biological father. Patricia helped her track him down, and Emma sent him a letter explaining who she was. His response came 2 weeks later, 5 pages of grief and joy and apology for a disappearance that hadn't been his choice. They met in a coffee shop in Seattle on a rainy afternoon. David was 52 now, his dark hair graying at the temples, but Emma could see traces of her own face in his, the shape of his jaw, the way he smiled. He brought photographs of Katherine, stories Emma had never heard, memories of a love that Vincent Sterling had tried to erase. She would have been so proud of you, David said, tears streaming down his face, for fighting for the truth, for not letting them bury you the way they buried her. Emma met her half-siblings, David's children from his marriage, a boy and a girl who were thrilled to discover they had an older sister. She met David's wife, who welcomed her with open arms. She built a family from pieces she'd never known existed. But Vincent Sterling remained a wall of silence. He refused to see her, refused to acknowledge her publicly. His lawyers tried to negotiate a settlement, money in exchange for her silence, for an NDA that would bury the story once and for all. Emma refused. This had never been about money. Then 8 months after the DNA results were confirmed, Emma received an unexpected call. It was Montgomery again. "He's dying," Montgomery said without preamble. "Vincent had a stroke. He's in the hospital. He's asking for you." Emma's first instinct was to refuse. Why should she rush to the bedside of a man who had spent a year trying to destroy her, who had abandoned her as an infant, who had erased her mother's memory? But something in her, maybe curiosity, maybe compassion, maybe the part of her that was still that little girl who'd always wondered about her family, made her go. The hospital room was private, expensive, filled with machines that beeped and hummed. Vincent Sterling lay in the bed looking small and frail, nothing like the powerful tyrant Emma had imagined. His hair was white, his face gaunt, his hands shaking with palsy. He opened his eyes when Emma entered, and for a long moment they just stared at each other, grandfather and granddaughter, strangers bound by blood and grief. "You look like her," Vincent said finally, his voice barely a whisper. "Like Katherine." "It's uncanny." "I know," Emma said. She didn't sit down, didn't move closer to the bed. "Montgomery said you wanted to see me." "I'm dying," Vincent said bluntly. "The doctors give me weeks, maybe days, and I realized I don't want to die with this between us. So what do you want? Forgiveness?" "No, I don't deserve forgiveness." He closed his eyes, a tear sliding down his weathered cheek. "I want you to understand. When Katherine died, I broke. I looked at you in that hospital, so small and perfect, and all I could see was the thing that had killed my daughter. It was easier to blame you, to erase you, than to admit I'd driven her away. That my pride and my demands had put her in that situation. You were wrong," Emma said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "Katherine died because she had a medical complication. Not because of me, not because of her pregnancy. Because sometimes people die, and it's nobody's fault." "I know that now," Vincent whispered, "but I didn't know it then. And by the time I realized what I'd done, it had been years. How do you come back from that? How do you tell a child you abandoned them because you were too broken to see clearly? You don't, Emma said. You don't get to come back from that. You made a choice, and I've had to live with the consequences my entire life. I grew up alone. I grew up without a family, without knowing where I came from, wondering if I'd been unwanted. That's on you. I know, Vincent said, and I'm sorry. It doesn't change anything, and it doesn't make anything right. But I'm sorry. Emma stood there looking at this dying old man who had shaped her life through his absence, and she felt nothing. Not anger, not forgiveness, just exhaustion. Katherine wanted me, she said finally. She chose me. She loved me before I was even born. And you took that from both of us. You robbed me of a mother, and you robbed her of the chance to be one. That's the real crime, Vincent. Not that you abandoned me, that you erased the fact that I was ever loved. Vincent was silent for a long moment, his breathing labored. The journals, he finally said. Montgomery told me he gave them to you. Have you read all of them? Every word? Then you know about David, your father. I've met him. He's a good man. He loved Katherine. He would have stayed if you'd let him. I was protecting her, Vincent said, but the words sounded hollow even to him. Or I told myself I was. I couldn't see a future where my daughter ended up with a struggling musician, living in poverty, throwing away everything the Sterling name could give her. You mean everything the Sterling name could give you? Emma corrected. Katherine didn't want your empire. She wanted to live her own life. But you couldn't allow that because it meant admitting you didn't control everything. Vincent closed his eyes. You're right. You're absolutely right. And it cost me everything. My daughter died hating me. My granddaughter grew up without a family. Patricia barely speaks to me anymore. I built an empire, but I destroyed everyone I loved in the process. Emma felt a flicker of something, not quite pity, but a recognition of how thoroughly this man had ruined his own life through pride and fear. What do you want from me, Vincent? Why did you ask me to come here? I want you to take it, he said, opening his eyes to meet hers. The company, the foundation, all of it. Patricia doesn't want it. She's made that clear. She wants to continue her charity work, but the hotels, the real estate, the business empire, she has no interest. It should go to Katherine's daughter. It should go to you. Emma laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. You think I want your money now? After everything? No, but I think you deserve it. And more than that, I think you could transform it into something Katherine would have been proud of. Patricia told me about your ideas, turning some of the properties into affordable housing, creating scholarship programs for foster children, using our resources to actually help people instead of just generating profit. Patricia had no right to discuss that with you. She's trying to bridge the gap between us. She believes in you, Emma. She thinks you could be what this family needs, someone who understands what it's like to have nothing, who won't take wealth for granted, who will use power responsibly. Emma walked to the window, looking out at the city below. I don't want to be a Sterling. I don't want the name or the legacy or the burden of your guilt. Then don't be a Sterling, Vincent said. Be Katherine's daughter. Be Emma Richardson, who survived the foster care system and put herself through college. Be whoever you want to be. But take the resources and use them to build the world Katherine dreamed of. Emma turned back to face him. If I did this, and I'm not saying I will, it would be on my terms. Complete restructuring. Full transparency about the family's history, including what you did. A formal apology to every person your business practices harmed. And a foundation in Katherine's name that actually prioritizes people over profit. Done, Vincent said without hesitation. My lawyers have already drawn up the papers. Everything goes into a trust with you as the primary trustee. Patricia will maintain her role at the foundation, but you'll have final authority over the Sterling holdings. Montgomery will stay on as an advisor if you want him. Why? Emma asked. Why now, after fighting me for so long? Vincent's expression crumbled. Because I'm dying and I can't take any of it with me. Because for 26 years I've been haunted by Katherine's face, by the choice I made to erase you. Because maybe, just maybe, if I do this one thing right, Katherine might forgive me wherever she is. Katherine's dead, Emma said flatly. She doesn't get to forgive you or condemn you. This isn't about her anymore. It's about me and what I choose to do with the life I've built despite you. You're right, Vincent whispered. So what do you choose? Emma stood there looking at this dying old man and thought about Katherine. About a young woman who had chosen love over wealth, who had chosen her child over her family's approval, who had died too young, too alone, never knowing if her daughter would be okay. Emma thought about all the foster kids she'd known, all the people struggling to survive in a system designed to keep them down. She thought about the resources that could be redirected, the lives that could be changed, the legacy that could be rebuilt. I'll take it, she said finally. Not for you, not even for Katherine, really, but for every person who's been told they don't matter, that they're not worth investing in, that they should just accept their place. I'll take your empire, and I'll tear it down and rebuild it into something that actually serves people instead of exploiting them. Vincent smiled, tears streaming down his face. Thank you. Don't thank me, Emma said, because I meant what I said. The truth comes out, all of it. The world will know exactly what kind of man you were. I understand. Emma turned to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, I hope Katherine is at peace. She deserved better than all of this. She deserved better than me, Vincent agreed. But she got you. And you're magnificent. Vincent Sterling died 3 days later. The funeral was a massive affair, covered by every media outlet in the city. Emma attended, standing next to Patricia, accepting condolences from people who had no idea who she really was. The will reading happened a week later, when Vincent's lawyers announced that Emma Richardson, Katherine Sterling's daughter, was the primary beneficiary of the Sterling estate. The room erupted. Distant cousins and business associates who had never known she existed suddenly materialized, demanding their share, threatening lawsuits, claiming fraud. Emma sat through it all with Rebecca beside her, calm and collected. Let them fight, she said quietly. We have DNA evidence, legal documents, Vincent's recorded testimony. They can't win, and they didn't. Over the following months, every challenge was defeated. Emma Richardson became one of the wealthiest women in Portland, controlling a business empire worth billions. But she didn't move into Vincent's mansion, or wear designer clothes, or join the country club. She kept her studio apartment, kept working at the bookstore part-time because she liked it, kept living the life she'd always lived. What changed was everything else. The first thing Emma did was convert 3 of the Sterling properties into mixed-income housing, luxury condos on the upper floors to fund affordable units on the lower floors. She created a scholarship program for foster children, fully funded, covering not just tuition, but living expenses, therapy, and support services. She established the Katherine Sterling Music Foundation, offering free music lessons and instruments to underprivileged children. She hired David as the artistic director, watching him transform his grief into purpose. Patricia remained at the Sterling Foundation, but now with resources that actually matched their mission. Together, the 2 women began to reshape what it meant to be a Sterling, not a name associated with wealth and power, but with genuine service and transformation. Emma commissioned a memorial in the lobby of the Sterling Grand Hotel, a bronze sculpture of a young woman at a piano, with a plaque that read, Katherine Sterling, 1976-1998, brilliant, brave, beloved. Her legacy lives on in every dream we dare to pursue. On the 1-year anniversary of finding Katherine's photograph, Emma stood in front of that memorial with David, Patricia, Marcus, and a small group of people whose lives had been changed by the foundation. Montgomery was there too, retired now but present for this moment. Katherine never got to be my mother, Emma said to the gathered group, but she gave me something more valuable. She gave me proof that I was wanted, that I was loved, that my existence mattered. And she gave me a purpose. Every person we help through these programs, every life we change, every dream we fund, that's Katherine's legacy. Not the Sterling name or the Sterling wealth, but the belief that every person deserves a chance to choose their own path. She touched the bronze face of her mother, forever young, forever at the piano. Thank you, Mom, for choosing me, for loving me, for being brave enough to fight for what mattered, even when it cost you everything. Later that evening, Emma returned to her apartment. She'd finally agreed to move, but only to a modest two-bedroom in a working-class neighborhood. She'd kept almost nothing from Vincent's estate, just Katherine's journals and a few photographs. She opened one of the journals, reading her mother's words again. Emma Rose, my daughter. My dream, my hope. If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. But know this, you were loved. You were wanted. You were worth every sacrifice. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Don't let anyone make you small. Be brave, be free, be everything I never got the chance to be. Emma closed the journal and looked around her apartment. Simple, comfortable, hers. She'd gone from having nothing to having billions, but the wealth had never been the point. The truth had been the point. The connection had been the point. Understanding where she came from so she could choose where she was going. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. News just broke. Sterling Industries stock is up 40% since you took over. Turns out ethical business practices are actually good for business. Who knew? Emma smiled. Who knew indeed? A single photograph tucked in a used book had led her to a family she'd never known existed, to a truth that had been buried for 26 years, to a mother who had loved her from the first moment. It had led her through pain and rejection and legal battles and grief. But it had also led her to purpose, to belonging, to the understanding that family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who choose you, who fight for you, who see you as you truly are and love you anyway. Emma Richardson had spent her whole life wondering where she came from. Now she knew. And more importantly, she knew where she was going, toward a future Katherine would have been proud of, toward a legacy built not on silence and shame, but on truth and transformation. The Sterlings had tried to bury her. Instead, she'd unearthed them all, exposing their secrets and their sins. And from those ashes, she was building something new, something honest, something beautiful, something that honored not the man who had abandoned her, but the woman who had died trying to give her life. Katherine Sterling had given her daughter one last gift, the courage to demand the truth, no matter how powerful the people who tried to hide it. And Emma Richardson had taken that gift and transformed it into something extraordinary. If this story of courage, truth, and the unbreakable bonds between mothers and daughters moved you, remember that every person deserves to know where they came from. Remember that powerful families can hide secrets, but they can't erase love. Remember that sometimes the greatest legacy isn't what we inherit. It's what we choose to build from the ruins of what came before. What would you have done in Emma's place? When faced with a family that rejected you, would you have had the strength to claim your truth anyway?